Starting stream. This video is unavailable. Will that update? Will it update? Let's try refreshing. And it works. All right. Privacy public. See what it's like on the actual page. Yeah, works. Mute that. All right. Just give me a moment and we'll get started. Right, so in the last 3 videos I did, I started working on rebuilding the dashboard of a web app called WaniKani using Tailwind CSS. I've had a few reports that the text size was basically illegible, which I kind of already knew about, but was going la 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 la, I can't hear you when I noticed that, which is regrettable, but you know, I started this basically not knowing what I'm doing. I've kind of made the decision that I'm going to restart the project just so like whilst the previous videos are still online and they're still watchable and there may be things of value in them, I think it would be best to start this again and let it be followable from the start with all of the code being visible. So apologies if you watched the last 3, but it's probably going to be a different approach to some extent. So we'll see how this goes. I'm just going to double check a second, make sure that this is actually viewable. Full screen. Alright, so my terminal window's a bit on the my terminal's a bit on the ledge. Oh no, it's fine. It's just my my video quality isn't as quite as sharp as I'd like on the stream, but it is legible. Right. Okay. So I'm literally restarting this again from scratch, including like a brand new installation. So you get to watch me do lots of fun setup stuff to begin with. Right, so first things first, we're going to install a new Laravel application. So Laravel new, just call it WaniKani again, Wani-Kani. Right, whilst that's doing its thing, I'm going to bring up a browser window and talk you through what it is we're building. And also like the methodology behind how we're building it. So WaniKani.com. Alright, so I've still got my dev URL in there, which we're going to be using again. but I've deleted the project as it currently stood. Alright, so this is WaniKani, and what it is a web app for learning Japanese kanji, which are like the characters that are used in large part of the written Japanese language. The idea is it's a spaced repetition software that introduces characters to you over time, along with mnemonic devices to help you to remember what they mean and how they are read, and then quizzes you them, and as you get quiz questions right or wrong, which like ask you what is the meaning of this, or what is a specific reading of it, you can advance in how well you know that particular character, and it becomes far less frequent that you will see a character as you get better with it. And then you sort of like rise up the ranks in it, or like it rises up the ranks for you until you hit this final stage where you are deemed to have learned it enough to not need to see it again. So what we're going to be rebuilding is the dashboard itself, which consists of basic nav bar. This is linked to the home page. This is the usual sort of my account menu. Then there are indicators for how many lessons, which is like new things to learn. How many reviews, which is like going back and reviewing old things. It has it explains levels, which sort of like each level is like a group of characters that you can learn. I am currently up to level 15, so not that far out of the total 60, but I'm not sort of like going all in on it. Like a lot of them, the characters I already knew, so it's just sort of like this is more a case of me sort of like reviewing things than learning them from scratch. Then you have a few other sections which I won't go into at the moment. You have a bar of like current status. So you have, this is usually how many characters you have available now. No, it's not how many characters you have available now. Sorry, I'm talking nonsense. This tells you when you will next have something available to review. It's telling me that I have something available now, which is true. If you have a look here, I have 7 reviews available at the moment. It tells you how many you will have become available to review again within the next hour, which for me currently stands at 0. And then it tells you how many you'll have available to renew. Why do I keep saying renew? Review within the next 24 hours, which for me is 119. You then have the different statuses, as well as counts for the number of characters that you have at those statuses. So I have like the beginning level, which is categorized as apprentice. I have 102. Moving up to 344, which are burned, and I will not see them again. You have like progression for your current level, which I am on but haven't started, so this bar is, in fact both of these bars are empty. And then you have like a few indicators as to new unlocks within the last 30 days. So it's like all different characters that you have had become available for you to learn within 30 days. Critical condition items are things that you keep getting wrong, and then burned items in the last 30 days are the things that you have completed, as it were, in the last 30 days. You then have section for recent community topics, which is basically there is an attached message board, and there is a link to the blog, which is it heads off to Tumblr. So that's really all of the areas that we're going to be dealing with at the moment, and I can tell you that the Laravel application has finished installing as well, so that's good timing. Right, so if I open up Sublime Text, that's my old version of this. Right. Right, okay. Move Sublime Text over to my secondary desktop. Right, so that's the wrong thing. Alright. There we go. Move this over to the secondary desktop. Go full screen with it. Okay, so the reason I'm starting off with a blank Laravel application when we're not really going to be leveraging anything that's built into Laravel is it comes with a lot of the like compilation tools already set up for you. A lot of sort of like the webcap. That's a new project that I should maybe start. The Webpack configuration is handled by Laravel Mix, so it boils it down to a few npm commands that you can run and without having to worry about anything else, which is something I like because dealing with configuration for any project is not fun. Alright, anyway, let's get started. So first things first, let's get it rendering a page of some description. So web.php. Is this nice and legible? Should be. The font size is big enough now. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so I'm just going to delete what we have with the application to begin with. And you know, I'm not. First things first, I'm actually going to just commit this. Git init, git status, add all, right, and that's that for now. All right, so this first what am I talking about? Alright, let's restart that. So I'm in the web.php, which is like the initial routing file. By default, it shows like the general Laravel welcome page. I'm going to remove this and replace it with root view, which is just a simple a simple helper function. So rather than sort of going through a controller or going through a closure, you can just tell a root to map straight to a view in Laravel. So root view, just use the general root view, and let's call that dashboard. And now we need a view called dashboard. Resources, views, right? Welcome, you can be deleted. New file. Then call it dashboard.blade.php. And should have an autocomplete here, but it doesn't seem to want to do this. Maybe I don't. Ah, HTML, not exclamation mark. That's why. So WaniKani dashboard. Alright, so that'll do for now. Ordinarily, I would move the HTML structure into a separate layout file, but right this moment, since we're not going to be having multiple pages, I don't think that's something we particularly care about. So again, we need to do some more installation, but before that, I'm just going to commit again. Right, so yes, that's something we want to commit, as is that. And we want to add the resources folder. Right, so we want to install Tailwind and get it compiling, and I believe there is now a preset for that, so if there is, we can use that. I'm just going to do a quick Google. Laravel front-end presets Tailwind CSS. Yes, it does exist. So Michael Dorinda has merged branch Lawrence a master. Okay, so what do I need to do? Alright, fresh install, done. Composer require, Laravel front-end. Okay, cool. So use Composer to install this. Alright, so what do I need to do next? Alright, PHP Artisan preset Tailwind CSS. Okay, so it actually can come with custom versions of some of the existing files, it seems. Right, okay, so generated successfully PHP Artisan preset Tailwind CSS. I don't need the PHP because I've already got Artisan set up to run. That's it. npm install and npm run dev. Alright. Alright, well, npm will take its time to install, so whilst we're waiting for that to do that, I'm going to talk about Tailwind itself. Learn more. So, according to the Tailwind website, Tailwind is a utility-first CSS framework for rapidly building custom user interfaces. So, what that means is, compared to what you might be used to in a CSS framework, it is not a library of existing components. It's not like Bootstrap where you get a lot of buttons and you get a grid and you get a whole host of things to help you build up a user interface really, really quickly that may or may not scale with how you're eventually going to want your site to look like. Okay, we've installed. Okay, so there is an npm update available as well. I think I will ignore that for now and continue explaining what we're going to be doing. So yes, sorry, bear with me a second. Yeah, so in comparison to something like Bootstrap, rather than getting so Bootstrap comes with buttons, it comes with panels, it comes with all sorts of components that are probably going to be useful to you, especially if you're in the early stage of a project and you maybe don't want to be spending loads of time on your CSS. But it's not very good for creating custom UIs. It's not very good for building out something that really works for your application. Everything feels kind of bootstrappy a lot of the time, or you have to do a lot of work sort of dancing around it to get it to behave the way you want to. Tailwind, on the other hand, is lots and lots and lots of what are called utility classes. So they are things that will, for instance, you have a class like text-name of color that will just make the text a certain color, or bg-color, make the background color. You also have things like rounded corners. You have things with borders. You can achieve grids, so there's like a lot more flexbox based. So like you give something a class of flex to make it flexbox, and then you give the child elements widths, and then they kind of work out. So there's a lot of things that you can do with it. It's a lot more flexible than something like Bootstrap or Foundation. So for instance, this card that's in the documentation that Adam has put together, that's all achieved just by sort of stacking all these classes. So you have this outer div that has white background, MX auto, so margin left and margin right auto, has a maxed width on it, large shadow, rounded large corners, and then overflow hidden, and so on. If you want to sort of like see how it's put together, I recommend checking out the documentation. Yeah, so that's what we're going to be using to rebuild the UI of WaniKani, or the dashboard UI of WaniKani. Okay, so let's get started. Right, so what has this given me? The welcome page is back, probably because I installed the preset after deleting it. Resources. So I have a Tailwind JS file. This is where all of the configuration for your application lives. So if we run through this, you have colors, which currently contains a whole spectrum of each of the different colors that I believe that you might need. So you've got black through white, coming through sort of like 7 different greys, 7 reds, 7 oranges, 7 yellows, 7 greens, 7 teals, 7 blues, 7 indigos, 7 purples, and 7 pinks. Ooh, this is new. Get brand darkest, return this orange darkest. Okay, so there's some new stuff in there. Like it's still like fairly early days, so there's a lot of new stuff being added. Be interesting to take a look at what this is doing. Then you have your breakpoints defined, so it switches to small screen at 576 pixels, medium at 768, large at 992, and extra large at 1200. Some fonts, which we're not going to be using, we'll be replacing them with our own, but those are the default fonts. Some text sizes, ranging from so the smallest is 0.75 rems, which works out at about 12 pixels. Like the base 1 rem is 6 pixels, so everything's sort of like based on a multiple of that. And then goes through to like the highest one is 5XL, which is 48 pixels. Font weights, which go through from 100 to 900. Obviously that will depend on what weights your font is actually available in. Some line heights, some letter spacing, text color, so that's using our colors, background colors are using our colors. Border widths ranging from, like the default is 1 pixel, 0 to 4, and you can add your own. You can remove ones you're not going to use. Some border colors are again using the colors. Border radiuses, so ranging from small, which is 0.125, to full, which is 9,999 pixels. Bunch of widths, some of them are sort of set widths, some are percentage widths, and get another one which is like screen, and that's 100 VW, which represents whatever the current width of the screen is. Then we have heights, which is kind of the same deal, although minus the percentages. So you have various rem sizes. You have full, which is 100%, and you have screen, which is 100 VH. Annoyingly, this is a thing I've been fighting with quite a bit. You ever try and use 100 VH on iOS? There's still a bit of a scroll. Yet to find a workaround for that. If you have one, please let me know, and I will be your best friend forever. Some min widths. Ooh, that's interesting. They used to be predefined min widths, and now they are not. Some min heights. Max widths. Oh no, it's max widths that they were predefined, and they still are. Max height. Paddings. And there used to be more paddings, I think. No, they didn't. A lot of my projects have like quite a lot of padding in them, so I'm used to this padding list being a lot bigger, whereas this is fairly compact. But that's why you can add your own, because what makes sense for a project I'm working on might not make sense for a project you're working on. Some margins, some negative margins, like a bunch of shadows, which are like defined here as medium, large, inner, and none, which I'm not sure those entirely make sense as names for them. I'll go into that in a bit once I get to put some shadows on things. But actually, to be fair, they're fine for names for the presets. I struggle with naming my own shadows. Alright, Z-index, or Z-index if I were speaking American, which I'm not. Which currently you have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. But again, you can add your own. I have, on a few projects, created a Z-index of infinity, which I've assigned to like the most ridiculously large number ever. And then it's come back to bite me because I needed one that was like one more. Some opacities, there's like 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%, and 0, of course. SVG fill, currently have current color, which basically defaults to the current text color. But you can also add your own if you want to manually set fill on SVG using a class. Same again with stroke. And then you have a configuration file that lets you turn all the modules that come with Tailwind on or off, or make it available in responsive versions, in hover versions, and a focus version. So just to stop and explain what I mean when you say responsive versions or hover or focus. With Tailwind you have variants of each, or almost each class. Some things this doesn't apply for, but you can put screen size, name of class, and then it will apply it for that screen size upwards, rather than for all screen sizes. Same with, you can do hover name of class and it will apply it on hover, and you can do focus name of class and it will apply it when it has focus. And then in this module section breaks it down into different sets of rules that you can switch on or off, and you can either use them, create responsive variations of them, create hover variations of them, create focus variations of them. And the only other thing you can also do with it is something called group hover, which is you give a class of group to a parent element, and then within the child elements you do group hover name of class, and that will enable a class if you happen to hover over the parent rather than the child itself, which is switched off by default for absolutely everything, just for reasons of space. But it's a useful thing that we will be using at various points during this project. You then have a few advanced options. Prefix basically allows you to almost namespace your classes. So rather than using the defaults, it will put the prefix before them, and just allows you to like make sure if you're using something else and you're sort of dropping Tailwind in as an addition, it makes it so that you don't have any conflicts. Maybe if you've already got Bootstrap in place, some of the classes that they create have the same names, so it means that they're not overlapping. Important, if you switch it to true, it then appends exclamation important to the end of all of the classes that get generated, just in case you have any specificity wars going on. That will help you clean that up a bit. And then you have separator, which is like I said about different classes having a colon to separate either sort of like the breakpoint or the hover state or the focus state or the group hover state. A few different I'm not sure which ones they are, but there are some frameworks that on the back end that don't allow you to use, or templating languages that don't allow you to use colons in a CSS class because they are fairly uncommon. So you could replace that with, if I wanted to use, like for instance, dash or double dash or 10 dashes or anything. I could use anything here. I'm going to stick with a colon because that's what I know. So those are all of the options. And I believe we should have a CSS, main CSS. So we do have this file that is being generated. Let me have a look at the resources, assets, CSS, main CSS. So this is what you have to include in your Tailwind, in your initial CSS folder file to get CSS to get Tailwind to compile, which is using something called post CSS to generate all of the classes for you. To start off with, you add this pre-flight option, which is one of the first things that you need in there, which just basically creates some base styles for the overall project. And then you import utilities. You then have the space here to create your own classes, either as components that combine multiple utilities or as overrides or utilities of your own if they don't fit in with the things that Tailwind already provides. But yeah, those are the things that exist. One thing that Tailwind doesn't currently do is any kind of support for CSS Grid, which I'm hoping is going to be a big thing this year because it looks amazing. Be interesting to see where that goes. I think it's only not in there because the browser support is not quite there yet. Like most browsers support it, but IE 11 probably never will to any like amazing extent. And it's just a case of like, if you've got a project that still needs to support IE 11, then it's probably not going to be something that you can use. Hopefully give it a year or so and we'll be in a state where that's kind of dropped off in terms of the usage and it will be usable. Yay! Alright, let's do some work. Where are we? Alright, so what do we get if we go to... no, not that. WaniKani.dev. Oh no, I used a dash this time. That's good. My connection is not private. Nope, you're right, it's not. Right, so what's it called? let's secure this connection. Alright, by default, I'm using Laravel Valet as my local server. By default, it now comes using .test development domains rather than .dev, which is owned by Google, and as of one of the more recent updates to Chrome, it now does not like that you're not using a secure connection. But I haven't updated my installation, so I'm going to move to secure instead. Right, so that is loading a white page, which is exactly what we're expecting it to do. And let's see what we get if we put something inside of the page. WaniKani clone. And yes, we're good. Alright. So what do we do first? Alright, last time I started off with recreating this area first, which I'm just going to inspect it to see what we're going to refer to it as. So review status is what it is called. In fact, let's add some comments in here to break down what the areas are. Review status. Navbar. Search. That's an element we've completely missed out on. I don't know why I'm inspecting it. I know it's a search bar. Review status. Progression. Progression. What is this area called? Right, these are not called anything as a whole. Recent unlocks. Kotoba table list. Kotoba table list. Right, so Kotoba table list. Kotoba just means word, by the way. Kotoba table list. Kotoba table list. Forum topics list. And news. Blog. Alright, so these are the 7 sections that need to be built in order for this to be complete, as well as the general main page gumph. So I think we start off this time by getting the actual background color of the page in place, and then start working on the nav bar. Let's just take this top to bottom. I think is the best way this time. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is add the background color to the page itself. So I'm just going to double check what the color is. Alright, so we have a couple of things going on. We have an actual background color, which is just it's a very light grey. And then we have a background texture. I am going to add the grey to our list of greys. So I'm just going to override whichever one it's closest to use it. So grey light or grey lighter. I I'm going to go with grey lighter for now. Am I? Yes, I am. Right, and then if I just add a class to the body, background grey lighter. I'm just going to add this. The actual title of the real version has a slash in it, so I'm going to add that to increase the authenticity. Right, so this isn't showing up because we have nothing in the body, but if I give it a MH screen, no, min H screen, that will make it so that it's least the screen height when it doesn't have any content. That's still not all. I'm also not including the CSS file, which is a bad mistake. Right. Right. That should then work. And it does. Right, we then have to do the background texture as well. There's nothing built in to handle background images. Well, that's not entirely true. There are utility classes for things like background repeat or background size, but there's nothing to actually give something a background texture or background, like nothing to actually assign an image to a background. So I'm just going to create my own utility, and I'm going to call this BG Gray Texture. Now, am I going to call it that? Let's see what we've got here. So BG Texture F6. All right, I'm going to just call it BG Texture actually. Alright, and I'm going to need a copy of this. I probably still have one, but if we just do this. Oh yeah, I remember grabbing this before. What are the odds that it's just still in my downloads folder? Right. Save image as. Oh, it's not. Oh no, I probably downloaded it straight to the project. Change code. Oh well. WaniKani. Public. I don't have an images folder. bgtexture.png. Right. Okay. And how's that doing now? I'll close this. Not working. Why are you not working? CSS doesn't appear to have updated. Why have you not updated? Because I wasn't running watch npm run watch. One of the advantages of Tailwind, like once you're like as part of a general workflow, you won't be touching the CSS that much, and one of the advantages is it doesn't necessarily matter if you've got npm running at those times, but if you're going into the actual CSS files, that's the time when you should have like npm watch running. And this is still not working. Why are you not working? BG grey lighter, BG. Curious. Let's just do a hard reload. Ah, there we go. There we go. So we have the texture in place. Now create the navbar itself. Alright, so what element are we going to use for this? Right, so they're using a div. I am going to use a div as well because we don't mind. It's not like we're not going to be building this as a real application. No one's ever going to use it, so just build everything in divs for now. Like ordinarily I'd be thinking about like building this in a more semantic way, but div will do us just fine. Alright, okay, so the first thing you want to do is give this a white background. So class BG white, we'll give it a white background. Navbar. Right, so text will just give it some space, and it is there, and it has a white background. So that is a success. And we want to give it a shadow as well. So this is our shadow. So it's got box shadow 0, 1 pixel, 10 pixels, and then just 10% black. So this is where go to shadows. Curious. Okay, so I guess what that's closest to is the default here. So rather than creating something that we name something else, we just I should not have done that. If we just get a shadow, I'm just going to use that for our new shadow as well. So copy this into here, and then if we go back into not that, I'll close out of this, close out of this, go into here, and then shadow, and yeah, we have a shadow. Alright, well that's a start. And then the next thing we need is to start adding some of these wonderful status indicator circles. So let's start off with the levels one, just because it's the simplest. Like these hollow circles are probably the simplest available. So if we start off with those, okay. So I'm just going to create an ordered list here. If we give this a class of list reset, basically removes the bullet points from the list, and it also sort of like removes all the, like, I'm not sure if it's margin or padding that you get from a normal HTML list, but it just basically turns it into, imagine if you just had a bunch of divs instead of a list. So that list reset is what I meant to say. List reset, and let's just create one list item at the moment. So you have a list item containing a link that has a span, has some text, and in this instance has a chevron. Okay. Href equals hash. So we're expecting this to look like a giant mess at the moment. Lo and behold, it is a giant mess. And so the first thing we can do to tidy this up is to add a class to the link and call it no underline. Which, as you would expect, removes the underline that you get by default when using a link. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do to tidy this up is to add some... Right, what do we want to give some padding to? I think we want to give it to... So, they've used it on the actual link itself rather than anything else. So, if we do that as well, so... padding 20 pixels, 15 pixels, 20 pixels. Alright, so what does that work out as? Alright, so 20 divided by 16. So it's 1.25 rem. And so I'll use this as an opportunity to explain how like scales of padding or margin work. So by default, 1 rem equals 4 in the arbitrary scale of Tailwind. Everything else is basically based on that. So, like with 1, 2, 3, 4 is 1 is 0.25, 2 is 0.5, 3 is 0.75, and 4 is 1 rem. You then get out of the box 6, which it skips straight to, which is 1.5, and then 8, which it also skips straight to, which is 2. It's sort of like, it's clear enough that if you wanted to fill in the blanks with whatever things based on that scale you wanted to use, then that is fine. Also, if you wanted to delete it all and create your own scale, that is also an option. I see no reason not to go with the scale that comes out of the box. So all I need to do is add 5 and then make that 1.25 rem. And then, so I've added this py5 class that adds padding to the top and the bottom, and lo and behold, we don't have any padding because I am not hard. Oh, no, I am hard refreshing. Why don't we have padding? Because we have not set something. Right, so if I try overflow hidden on the... No, that's not doing it. What am I missing? Yeah, try making the link a block item. There we go. We have padding. And that's the next thing we need to do is make this flex, just so we've got, just so the links are all horizontally aligned rather than vertically. And right, so what next? Right, so we want this 15 to be on its own, in its own area. So class equals block. Good. All right. Right. So what do we want the border to be? I'm going to create this circle now. So border. So the border is 0.3 m. How does that work out in relation to? So it's 0.3 m, and the font size here is 14. So 0.3 times. Right, so that works out. Oh, 14, not 15. So that works out as about 4.2. So I'm just going to say 4. Right, so margin. Ah, I'm already there. So, interesting. No, that's margin. We want border. So we have a class of 4. So if I put B4 here. Why are you not? It's border 4, isn't it? Idiot. Alright. Looking good. Right, so I'm guessing that rounded full is, yeah, it is fantastic. So we now have rounded circle. Alright, I want to make the font size right as well. So font, text size. Alright, so small is what we're after. I think it applies to all of the text within here as well. So I'm going to add it to. I'm actually going to add it to the list itself. I think so. There we go. Right, and I want to make it grey. Let's have a look at what grey we're using here. Right, so the border is 999 and the colour is 999. Great. So colours. No, going up here, aren't we? What are we closest to? So grey dark is the closest to 999 we have. And I'm going to add it to the list as well for now. Text grey dark. I'm reloading the wrong thing. No, I can't add it to the list because obviously the link needs to be the thing with the colour. I might, no, I'll delete it from the list. Okay, that's that. And then, is that? I don't think that has updated the colour. Okay. Unless it has. Yeah, I'm just being silly, I think. It looks different because it is different overall, but I'm fairly certain it actually is the same. Border grey dark as well. Yeah, okay. So the next thing I want to do is make it so that this is actually a circle. I believe the way it works here is just with padding. Unless I'm wrong. No, I'm wrong. So it's got a width and a height of 3.5, which works out at 57.38. So our rems are 16, so 57.38 divided by 16. So that puts us roughly in sort of like 3.5, 3.6 rem space. And right, so wait. Okay, so let's say we're going to use 3.5. Make it not quite the same, but close enough. So we want 14. And we're going to want the same for the height as well. Is it 14? 13, 14? Yes, it's 14. So 14, W14. Something I try and do as much as possible is keep all of my classes in alphabetical order on my elements. It just means that as I'm looking through them, I can, at a glance, I can see what I've added already, rather than sort of like wondering, well, I may have added that, I may not, I better check all of the classes. I don't know whether that's generally, well, it doesn't hurt. I don't know whether I spend too much time maintaining that, or whether it's a very useful thing, but it's something I try and stay in the habit of doing. So we have a circle. Right, so the next thing we need to do is actually get this text properly centered. So I'm going to try just sticking flex on here. So justify. So item center will set align items, and justify center will set justify content, and that centers it quite nicely. Like, it's not looking right because it's the wrong font, but that does the job for what we are currently looking to achieve. So the next thing we need is to get levels text centered a bit and add some spacing between it. So, right, so first thing, I'm just going to stick, do I put it, yeah. I'm just going to stick text center on here. I was debating whether to put it on the list itself or the list item, but I think we're going to be using text center for pretty much everything, so it certainly doesn't hurt. And yeah, that does the job. And so what spacing have we got? So we've got a bit of margin underneath the circle, margin bottom 0.5m, so that should be MB2. Let's see what this does for us. Yes, that is looking nice. Okay. And I'm just going to finish this up by adding the shadow that was inside of it as well. So we actually have two shadows on these. We have an inset shadow and we have a an exterior shadow, which you can't really see. It's like it's like 1 pixel of white, but because we're keeping it, because we want to rebuild this, I say we keep it anyway. So I might just call this shadow like navbar circle or something. I'd rather go with a name that's a little more descriptive of the shadow itself, but I don't think that's going to happen at the moment. I'm refreshing the wrong thing. Alright, so we have this lovely shadow. Alright, the final thing that we need to do to get this in place, which will probably end this stream, is to get the carrot in. Like, I know from previously that they just use font awesome, so whilst I would personally prefer for projects these days not to use icon fonts, I'm more of an SVG person. I'm going to stick with what they're using, so font awesome CDN. Okay. Let's just pull it straight in. Alright, let's see what this does and whether or not I am getting the name of the font right, the item right. No, carrot is not what we want. It's chevron, isn't it? Yes. Alright, it's a bit smaller in there. Let's see what we can do about that. Alright, so font size 9 pixels. We don't have a 9 pixels so at the moment, so font. So let's create an XXS or 2XS. So 9. Oops. 9 divided by 16 is 0.65. 5625. Nine pixels. And then, unfortunately, I had a syntax mistake, syntax error in the Tailwind config, which sadly means I need to restart npm. I need to actually add that class to something. Text to XS. Doesn't like that. Why don't you like that? Why do you not like the font size? So that doesn't work. Why? Right. Let's try this with 0.65. See if it's just the no, 652. I have a suspicion it's like the level of how far it drops down. I think that's it. Right. No. Oh, that's what's going on. Font size inherit. I'm being dumb. So it is working by the look of it. It's working, but it's applying the font size, but it doesn't look any smaller. Right, let's see what happens if I just add 9. Right, so it's I'm going to make this just 9 pixels, see what happens there. So I've straight up made it 9 pixels and it still doesn't like that. Oh, it's this font rule, okay. Is it? Why are you not working? If I remove font size, it's still... This is the most specific, but it still doesn't work. If I stick an important on it, it does work. Curious. You know what? I think we're going to let that be for now. I don't mind the carrot being bigger. That's the thing I'd like to come back and sort. But in the interests of finishing up the stream for today, I think this is where we're going to leave it. So the plan for next time is to duplicate these, create some of the alternate variants. So this sort of like this filled navbar item, the logo one, the account one, and get the hover effect added in as well. So hopefully you will join me for that. I hope that if you've come from the previous videos, that this is not completely useless to you. I know we've recovered a lot of old ground, but hopefully being able to see the code is an improvement. And I said and I didn't know where I was going with that, so I apologise. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the stream. I hope you've gained something from the stream. Please feel free to like the video. Please feel free to subscribe. Please feel free to follow me on Twitter if that's your thing. It's just is at JamesO'Neill83. And thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye. Goodbye, and I must remember where I put the stop button. Ah, here we go. Bye-bye.